name is Holly Gail Ely, and this is Intro to Brush Lettering, Episode 2. In this episode, I go over many basic calligraphy strokes that, when practiced, will lead to formation of beautiful calligraphy that you can be proud of. In Episode 1, I went over different pens and brushes that you can use and some basic strokes. However, in this episode, I will go over the same strokes that I went over in Episode 1. So if you're just beginning with Episode 2, don't feel like you have to go back and watch Episode 1 unless you would like to. You can follow me at www.theharperpapercompany.com or on Instagram at The Harper Paper Company, and I'm on Periscope as Holly Gail Ely 3. Okay, first I'm going to show you the brushes that I used in this right here. The intro to was done with the Wink of Stella brush pen by Zig. This is a very fun pen, and the ink in it is absolutely gorgeous, but it is a little bit more difficult to master as this has sort of a paintbrush type feel to it versus some brush pens where the tip is felt and does not separate. I bought this pen at Hobby Lobby, and I believe I've also seen the same one at Target before. For the second line in this, I used my Tombow Fudinowski pen. You can get a good look at it here. This fun little pen is actually a Japanese pen, but you can order them on Amazon.com, and I just recently ordered some from jstationery.com for a much cheaper price. I believe it was $2.20. Since I don't think you'll be able to spell that, this is a Tombow Fudinowski pen. For the third line, I use my trusty Tombow dual brush pens, and these can be purchased through Amazon.com or Dick Plick Art Supplies. This is just generic Tombow dual brush pen. It's very, very fun to use and very user-friendly as well. You have the brush tip and just a solid tip. Beside these three pens, I'm going to show you something else that you might be able to use that you probably already have at home. Here, I have a cheap marker, just a regular one. I had these for years, but they're actually somewhat decent to use for calligraphy. And that would be something that you would not have to go out and buy. So while I showed you a lot of fancy supplies, don't feel like you have to go out and buy something today unless you want to. You can still practice your calligraphy with just a plain marker. Okay, in today's lesson, I'll be referring to worksheets that I made this morning. I'm going to show you how you can get those worksheets and you can use them or follow along with me. This right here is my website, theharperpapercompany.com. When you're on my website, you can just click the very top on calligraphy and calligraphy resources. There you'll see different calligraphy resources that I have, including the dot paper I used in episode 1 and that I love to do with whenever I practice my calligraphy, and the basic calligraphy stroke practice worksheets featured in episode 2 of Intro to Brush Lettering. You'll just click right there. And then you'll either select episode 2 worksheet medium or episode 2 worksheet small. The difference between those worksheets is the size, as you might have guessed. I will be working today with my Tombow dual brush pen with the medium worksheet. As the Fudanowski pen and the Faber-Castell Pitt brush pen write much smaller, I have created a version of the worksheet that would be good if you are using one of those pens. So this will be what the smaller worksheet looks like. And here is the medium-sized worksheet. This is actually my rough draft, but to save printer paper, I will be writing on the rough draft rather than the final version. With calligraphy, drilling and practice is really your key, and those basic strokes are what are going to help you become a great calligrapher. Without really mastering these strokes, if you jump into lettering, you're not going to be very happy with your lettering. You may think that your tools are inadequate, but really it's just drilling over and over again and practicing. On Instagram, I follow many different calligraphers, and there's always different daily challenges going on, and I recommend that you try to do a few words or a few letters a day so you can maintain your skills. So right here is page 1, and you can trace on top of my strokes. They're not perfect by any means. Several of them I was very unhappy with, but I left them there just so you can see that I'm not perfect. I'm still a beginner as well. You're going to want to begin with your downstrokes. And you don't have to go as fast as I am. Slow and methodical, especially as a beginner, is the way to go. You can do 2 lines of those and even reprint certain pages of these worksheets to repeat, or just print off the dot paper. This right here is the black dot paper. I usually prefer the gray dot paper because I can take pictures of it and you usually can't see the dots in the picture, but that's the reason why I'm actually using the black dot paper here, so you can kind of see my dots on the paper. You'll want to practice some thins. Usually whenever you're doing a thin stroke in calligraphy, you're going to be going up, but learning to barely connect the tip to the paper and make a consistent mark is very important, and that is why, while you can't see it now, I had an arrow. I'll show you the other worksheet. An arrow pointing that you should do that stroke down when usually it would be up. The important part here is just to practice that motion. And again, you can do several lines of these. I left you room for 2, but that does not mean that you should only do 2. Whoops, that one got a little bit too thick. And down to some curves. I'm going to start at the top and bring it around up. It is perfectly acceptable in calligraphy to pick up your pen in the middle of your stroke or in the middle of a letter. Usually whenever I am writing out phrases, I'll pick up my pen in between my letters. When I first began, I wanted to leave my pen always on the paper, and that led to less consistent strokes. If you want to keep practicing, feel free at any point in this video to pause me and spend some time working on your strokes before I demonstrate another one. Okay, and then I'm going to show you the exact motion that we just did, except opposites. Starting, going up, and then coming to your thick down stroke. Okay, and I left you several lines where you can go through and do many drills. And then once you have mastered the curves, we can start to connect our curves, or at least give the illusion that our pen never came up, because I always tend to pick up my pen fairly. Then on to our next basic stroke, a curve. This is a little bit more difficult than just wavy lines. As you'll see, my curves are less consistent and less beautiful as my wavy lines. For this, you're going to start out with a light touch and then apply pressure. This also looks almost identical to a C. And if your line does not look consistent, feel free to cheat, make it look a little better. Quite obvious to me that these curves are somewhere that I could use some more practice. And then after you work on those curves, you can come over and work on this that looks like a long string of extended L's. Beginning at the bottom, bringing it over and then down. On to our next page, you'll see that we're doing the exact same things that we did on the previous page, except completely opposite. Then once you've done several lines of the backwards C's, you come over here to the upside down L's. Start at the top with a very gentle line. Apply pressure on your downstroke. Go for the nice thin upstrokes. And with that, that concludes my series of basic strokes. I encourage you to spend some time every day drilling these basic strokes, and your calligraphy will improve by leaps and bounds. You can print these out multiple times. You can print out the dot paper. You can even use notebook paper. I found that notebook paper is great for calligraphy practice as well. Just encourage you to practice these. Practice, practice, practice. And then next, for episode 3, I'll give you a little teaser. I'm going to be breaking down the first 9 letters of the alphabet and demonstrating them for you. Again, my name is Holly Ely. You can find my website at www.theharperpapercompany.com. You can follow me on Instagram at The Harper Paper Company. And one of these days I may finally make a Periscope at Holly Gail Ely 3. Thank you so much for tuning in to Intro to Brush Lettering Episode 2. I hope that you have learned a lot.